I'm gonna bring a very special guest on stage, and I've said this before, well, I don't know if I've said this before, but when I started this business, I kind of had this idea that, I kind of had this insight that is on one of the slides, which is that like Silicon Valley really cares about product and they really don't think about monetization. They don't care about pricing, which was fundamentally insane to me because I'm like I want to build a business, and a business is something that makes money, and it's like very, very important to me. And so when I started this company in 2019, I kind of did like a literature survey of like, who's even thinking about this stuff? And honestly, the only person who came up, there's 2 books that came up. One was the Mom Test, and the other is Madhavan's book. And I think like it was like the only person I read the book and I'm just like, holy shit, like you think about this the right way. This concept of product, market, pricing fit, it's like hard to articulate, but once you read it, you can't unsee it. And so I'm incredibly excited to welcome him to the stage. He has a new book called Scaling Innovation. You all have a signed copy. And yeah, I can't be more excited because he's one of the like literal OGs in this entire field, and it's so cool to be on stage with him. So Madhavan, please come up. How's it going, man? So you have a new book.
Yeah.
I guess the first question is, why a book? Like, why not like a blog or something else?
Yeah, I can probably talk about why I wrote the book. Writing the first one was hard, so you would say, why did you do it again? It's been probably 9 years since we wrote Monetizing Innovation, and we had actually checked off 2 of the things from your checklist 9 years ago in that book. I wish more people had read it. I think thousands of founders have read it. It was, you need a monetization hero. It's a cross-functional discipline and reporting to the CEO. And the second one was, monetization is your product and price before product, period. That was the thesis of the book. That was great. I mean, a lot of good founders read the book. They actually said, okay, look, we built a product based on what customers need, what they're willing to pay for. We are not just building stuff and slapping on a price and hoping to monetize. We did that, but how do we actually scale our business? Yeah. So that question kept coming up. So we wrote Scaling Innovation as a sequel to Monetizing Innovation, where if Monetizing Innovation taught you how to build great products around customers' needs and willingness to pay, Scaling Innovation talks about how to build a great business and architect towards profitable growth. Now you might say, why a book? Why not a blog post? I think a book is a definitive statement of a lot of collective ideas that you can actually keep and read. And my intention of writing a book is to give back to the founders a bit of what I know. I mean, people like you read it. And, so many people have been inspired by that. And these books have actionable stuff that you can actually do Monday morning. That's my style of writing and Eddie's style of writing in this. Hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I love both. Obviously, I think I said earlier, I have like no original ideas. I just like learn from other people who are smarter than me and try to collate them into something. So maybe let's talk about the new book. What has maybe 2 questions. What has changed? Like, you wrote a book 9 years ago. It's a point in time understanding of like what you believe. What has changed for you between now and then?
Yeah, 2 things. One, there is a tremendous need to architect towards profitable growth, not just growth alone. I mean, especially, the old playbooks of let's just grow somehow and figure out monetization does not apply in AI, right? I mean, you have to profitably grow. What does that mean? You need to capture both market share and wallet share, and we can unpack that. That was the first thing that actually changed. And the second one, like you pointed out with AI, monetization is actually changing. I mean, you need to think about usage-based pricing, outcome-based models, and how to navigate POCs, how to have commercial discussions, how to create an ROI, what to capture, how to keep a beautifully simple pricing at the end of the day that resonates, with your customers. If your customers can go back and articulate to you what your pricing strategy is, you have a beautifully simple pricing. Otherwise, you just don't, right? So all of these things have changed. So we wrote the book with an emphasis for AI companies and how to actually build towards profitable growth.
Very cool. What do you think is, like, if you look at the Valley, who do you think kind of understands this the best, at least from, maybe definitively, but like from if people are here like looking at model companies, it's like, I want to grow up to be X, like who is that for you?
I think several companies come to mind. I think you already talked about Bread. So I do believe that Sierra is a good role model. Like when you have a full podcast where you're talking about the commercial models and the outcome-based models. That's actually a statement where you're actually saying, I'm putting skin in the game, my destiny is aligned with my customers, we both are tied in this together, we are building a trust, and we are monetizing based on that trust. So I think that's a bit of gold standard for me. There are lots of early stage startups who are also now experimenting with outcome-based models that I think that are very inspiring to actually see founders take up this topic right away. I mean, even in pre-seed, seed stages, right? I mean, I think that's fascinating. But if there's a large company to look up to, I would probably pick Sierra, Quay, and that have done great work. So.
Totally. What I guess in the book you talk a lot about kind of where companies get this wrong, like this failure to build a profitable business. Like, what are the common failure modes, maybe for startups and then for larger businesses, especially when kind of they're trying to go through this transformational step?
Yeah, I think to understand the failure modes, you actually need to understand the leadership archetypes. When I talk about leadership archetypes, I divide this into focus on market share and wallet share. Because if you want to profitably grow, you need both market share and wallet share. It's not a choice, right? I mean, that doesn't mean you put equal effort in market share and wallet share at every point in the company journey. You need to put equal attention, and that's the point, right? Even if you're taking market share moves, you know how to actually get to the wallet share. So if you actually take market share, on the y-axis and wallet share on the x-axis, low, high, if you are, very much focused on market share and ignore wallet share, you might call yourself a disruptor, right? The traps that you would actually fall into is you land, but you're not expanding because you gave the farm away. And you also fall into a trap of, customer one is not a customer earned because you're so acquisition focused that you're not actually, retaining the customer, upselling the customer, and all of that motion is never built. Right? If you're on the bottom right where you're wallet share focused but not really thinking about market share, I call them money makers. So you're really focused so much on coming up with a grand scheme of a monetization model and everything else, and you probably ignore acquisition as much because you think that you're the next Apple and you're going to start high and come down in price. You land into traps like you might come across as nickel and diming because you probably focus too much on monetization, or you might fall into the premium price paradox, which I call, which is your price so high that at the end of the day the product does not resonate with anyone. The quadrant that is probably one of the worst ones to be in is the lower left quadrant, where you're neither focused on monetization, market share, nor focused on wallet share. You might call yourself a community builder. You're obsessed with 100 customers. I need to get this right for them. And you fall into traps like, you trained your customers to expect more for less because your best customers actually you just kept giving away. And you're so obsessed with those customers that you actually miss the forest for the trees. You're building for these customers, but you probably didn't even realize that there's an entire adjacent market that you can actually go for. So these 6 traps are well documented in the book. And all telltale signs of when you actually see this. I've seen this in so many organizations. I've worked personally with over 250 companies, helped them navigate monetization. You see all the different archetypes, but the right archetype is the top right quadrant, where you're both market share focused and wallet share focused. That is what we call as a profitable growth architect. And the entire book is about how to become one. Every chapter ends with questions that a CEO needs to reflect and think and ask, and this is a CEO-led topic.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So you're talking about like CEO-led, which definitely resonates with me. But a lot of people in this room aren't CEOs. So aside from giving the CEO your book and making them do a reading club, what's the, like, how do people actually start to like change the mind of their leadership? And like, what are like, maybe if you have a few practical examples of companies that were like in one of these traps and they actually built themselves out, and how did someone who's like maybe owns pricing or owns like product or something like that, how do they actually make the change?
Yeah, absolutely. This doesn't mean that the book is only for CEOs. It's actually for leaders. I think let's leave it at that, right? I mean, and if you're a leader, you need to reflect on those questions. And of course, if it has to be a CEO topic, as in the culture, the resources, everything set from the CEO, but probably the CEO is not rolling up their sleeves and setting price sheets. I mean, if they are, that's we can question that. All right. I mean, so there are it's a distributed job, as like you rightly pointed out. But there are very practical things that we have written which are, Monday morning actions. One of the things is, you talked about there's so many different pricing models that is actually possible with AI. That's absolutely true. The old vintage was, let's set a seat-based pricing and do a good, better, best. Good, better, best is frankly dead for AI. I believe that it's going to be more use case-based packages. We can discuss that if you want. But when you actually look at the so many options available, how do you even decide what to do, right? So what we came up with was and we believe in simplifying the world. If it's complex, let's simplify it and give people a choice. So we came up with a 2x2 matrix that, literally thousands of founders already have derived benefits from. When you think of what is the right pricing model for AI, from our experience, it just comes down to two dimensions: autonomy and attribution. If you understand this, you can pick the right model from all of the remaining options. If you don't use a thought process like that, you'll probably just chase something, you'll build it wrong, and then you have to keep iterating, right? With autonomy and attribution, those are the two things that have actually happened with AI, as in agents can autonomously operate, and the attribution is increased. A combination of autonomy and attribution gives you insane pricing power. How do you capture that? That's the key. So if you think about autonomy on the y-axis and attribution on the x-axis, and you can figure out by now that I love 2x2s.
Did you work in consulting?
Of course I worked in consulting. Yeah. Consultants love 2x2s. You can never take the consult on another person. But anyway, the autonomy on the y-axis, low to high, attribution low to high. If you take the bottom left quadrant where you're not that autonomous, as in there's a human needed in the loop, which makes sense that you're a co-pilot product, your attribution is less. Frankly, you're relegated to a seat-based pricing at that point, right? If you think about Slack, for instance, I can say that the productivity actually went up by using Slack. You cannot measure it, you cannot monitor it, you cannot meter on it, you cannot charge on it. It is still a seat-based license. Attribution to the end KPIs of a business is not strong. That's what I mean by attribution. And autonomy, as in, is low because you're still a co-pilot product, right? If you take the bottom right quadrant where autonomy is low, you're still co-pilot, but your attribution is higher, then you need to be in a hybrid model, which is a seat-based model plus consumption-based model. Yep. And we can talk about various ways to actually do that, but you're in some kind of hybrid model. Like people like companies like Clay or Cursor or even Canva actually have all moved to that quadrant, right? And that's the easiest quadrant to go. That's also why you see a spike in hybrid-based models now. Seat-based models, frankly, just purely on its form is, I said this 4 years ago that it's going to die. I think it's dying now. Slower than I think it should, but it's dying, right? In the sense that if you build AI autonomous agents that actually reduce the number of seats in an organization, you're catching a falling knife at some point, right? And there's no pathway to monetize. If you're in the top left quadrant where autonomy is high and attribution is low, likely you're an infrastructure product behind the scenes running fully on your autonomous, you're a picks and shovels player. Your product is not directly attributing to the success KPIs of your customers, so usage is your best proxy for value, so you are going to be on a usage-based model. If you're on the top right quadrant where autonomy is high and attribution is high, that's the golden quadrant to be in. Then you can be in an outcome-based model. Why? Because you're autonomous, the AI does stuff, and the attribution is high, which means you can partake in the outcomes, right? I think you talked about Tom at Zendesk yesterday, a similar example like FinAI at Intercom. They only monetize on if the ticket is resolved by an AI agent. If a human intervention is needed, it's not. And the attribution loop is completely closed because the end customer says, I love the resolution of this ticket. It's clear. And that's the outcome-based model. Sierra is also in that quadrant, or companies like ChargeFlow, 25% of recovery on the chargebacks, etc. Those are all, that's the quadrant to be in, but that's not for everyone because you need to have very undisputable attribution and you need high degree of autonomy. What I see many founders make mistakes is saying, I need to build outcome, and the product is really not even ready for anything close to outcome because the attribution cannot be proved. Yeah. So pick your archetype correct, and then build pathways to move across these quadrants. That's what we talk about in the book. So the most comfortable, if you're an incumbent, the most comfortable moment is from seats to hybrids, hybrids to autonomous. Everyone is doing this. Like if you look at coding agents, GitHub started in seat, Cursor has now moved to like hybrid. Yep. Now we are talking about autonomous, let's say software engineers who can actually work with me as a team. They'll go towards outcome-based models, right? So like building that pathway. So in the book we talk about how to build increased attribution, how to build increased autonomy, how to actually migrate that. In 3 years' time, I expect this outcome-based models to be at least 25% of companies. And if you're one of them, you're in lucky territory because that's an insanely awesome monetization model to have.
Yeah, I think the thing I took away is almost like it's like these 4 quadrants, but one of the quadrants is like the dominant quadrant in a market if it can be possibly done.
Correct.
And so it kind of introduces this game theoretic thing where it's like actually if you're in a market where outcome-based pricing is possible and you're not on it or moving toward it, like you should expect that market share is going to shrink, you're going to lose. And so I do think that like this movement toward outcomes is super interesting. So maybe you mentioned in the book there's kind of pragmatic lessons or ways of incrementally improving autonomy or improving like the falsified attribution. How like maybe take 1 or 2 tactics that you think this audience should like really pay attention to or that have been like pretty useful.
For sure. On the autonomy side, it is more about how can you let's say even if you're let's say a Copilot product, what can you actually build in terms of like autonomous agents that actually does end-to-end workflows and actually does jobs to be done. Like you said, I mean, we have changed from a world of like software for access to like software for work completed. So like what can you purpose build as verticalized solutions on top of let's say your product. So we talk about agentic examples, etc. on the autonomous side. That I think everyone in this room knows. The attribution bit is the harder one. Attribution really means that you're affecting the end KPIs of the business, and then how do you actually come across as you are affecting those KPIs and your end customer also agrees that those attribution is because of your product. So attribution comes down to like 3 factors. So one is your incremental, like anything that you can do on the incremental revenue side. You're increasing revenue, you're reducing churn, and your AI product can actually prove that. That's one bucket. The second is cost savings, which is I replace other existing licenses, I replace headcounts, or you don't need to hire any more people. That's all cost savings. And the third one is opportunity cost, which is I saved you 20 hours of work. What can you actually do with it? Right? I mean, that also is quantifiable. So if you think about it in these 3 buckets, like incremental revenue, cost savings, and opportunity cost, then you need to break down your product to say what KPIs are you actually affecting in each of these? How can I report back on these, build dashboards that actually prove that? I mean, even if you're saving 20 hours of time for like a salesperson in a week, report that and actually say, hey, these are the tasks that were actually done by AI, 20 hours were saved, right? So building attribution pathways that actually makes incredible sense, I think is important. And I think the other tactical tip that I would leave you with is, when you have an outcome-based model, it is your, best opportunity to show that you fundamentally believe in your product and value, okay? Why? I mean, and your customer might not take you upon that, and that is fine. Like I'll tell you a story of a startup that we just work with, early stage startup. They're building some completely autonomous attributable AI product, and let's just say that using these products throughput increases by 10% for companies, etc., or revenue increase by 10%. And this entrepreneur can actually show the attribution. But he was leading with a 50K price point. And I asked him, why is this 50K price point? Where do you get this fixed price? He's like, okay, that's the most I have courage for putting on the table. Asking for more sounds like I might lose the deal. I don't want to do that. I'm like, how much value is being created? It's tens of hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm like, no, we should think about this. We're like, why don't you just lead with 500K? He's like, no, I'm not sure. I don't know if I can justify that, and I'll be purple in my face. So we told him to actually put options on the table, 2 options. A 50K fixed plus 10% of the outcomes that you generate, and a 500K fixed fee, right? The entire conversation then revolved around what is that 10%? How do you actually measure it? How do you monitor it? That's a great conversation to have, because you've just changed the conversation to value-based selling. You're talking about ROI all day long. The customer did the whole conversation, realized that, holy crap, this is actually, if I do the 50 and 10%, I'm going to pay through my nose. 500K sounds good, right? And they're like negotiated with 400K. That's a 10x price increase by just showcasing that he truly believed in the product and an opportunity to suggest that he put skin in the game. So when you think about giving these kind of choices, I mean, if they take you up on that 50 and 10%, that's a high-class problem. That's awesome, right? So I think when you think about outcome-based models, don't be shy about giving options. I mean, it's more common than we think. You go to a pizza store, buy the pie, and buy a slice. Those are 2 different pricing models, right? So.
Yeah, I think I mean, I really like this point around outcome-based pricing. Like in theory, your incentives are aligned, but
Yes.
the way you present it, you're actually like literally aligning look, if this works the way that I claim it works, then I should be totally willing to do this. We're actually seeing a lot of startups starting to experiment with this, I think because what they're realizing is that customers more often than not will opt into this kind of model.
Yes.
And then it also forces you to prove the value continuously. It like actually forces you to build a better product.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the other part that I think your book makes super clear.
Just one thing that I would probably also leave with, I don't know, that clock just got to zero.
We can go 1 minute. I have one last question I want to ask you after this.
Yeah, so one other Monday morning tip, right? When you actually are in negotiations, it comes down to all about gives and gets, in the sense that if you don't get anything in exchange for like concessions that you actually give, what are you indicating? You're indicating to the other party that they can keep beating you down and they're not even satisfied. Maybe I should have negotiated more, right? So give and gets makes a negotiation authentic. Like, what do you get in exchange? So the next time someone asks you for a concession as hey, I need a 10% discount on this, whatever it is, ask them as a get, a value audit to be conducted every 3 or 6 months, whatever the frequency is for your business, where they invest people along with your people to jointly create a business case of the value that's actually generated. It's a very harmless ask during a negotiation, but it's the most insanely good thing you can do for your renegotiations and pricing power.
Totally. And it's also the foundation for building up joint trust that this outcome is actually, we both agree, like we're both putting skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question before we let you go. Okay, you for a very long time have been the guru on the hill, writing amazing books, influencing next generations of founders. Besides that, what are you doing these days, and how can this room kind of help you out?
Okay, thank you. So I built a track record of like working with companies. I worked, like I said, with over 250 companies, more than 25 plus unicorns, helping them navigate monetization. And for me, the realization was AI is changing everything, and monetization becomes a day zero problem. You have cost dynamics to navigate, and there's also a value capture opportunity. I mean, if you're tapping into labor budgets, that's 10x compared to software budgets. If you use the old playbooks, you'll under monetize from day one. For me, AI was what made monetizing innovation so cool, price before product, right? I mean, it's necessitated everyone to look at pricing very early. And for that early stage, the professional services business that I did was not a complete fit. I transitioned from that business from Simon Kucher. Some of my colleagues are here. It was a very friendly transition and a good one, and I'm proud about the teams that we actually built. And the book was co-written with Simon Kucher. Yep. We transitioned from that. Josh, who's my co-GP now, both of us at Simon Kucher, we left and we started a venture fund where the explicit goal is to work with very early stage AI companies, roll up our sleeves and help them with navigating monetization, outcome-based models, and everything that we actually talked about early stage in a venture stage capacity as a value-added co-investor. Several LPs in the room, you know who you are. Thank you for the support, and it's a game on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.